everyone, I want to welcome you to the very final set of patterns for the Celtic Knit Club's 2021. For anyone who was a part of the club, I want to thank you all for coming along on this journey with me. I hope you've enjoyed the whole process and you've learned a lot about cables and knitting, and also even working on a larger project over several months. For anyone who has not partaked in it, you will be glad to know that there is still a digital option available. And with that, you get all of the patterns and you get all of the videos that go along with each pattern. So at this point, you're actually in the hundreds in terms of support videos that go with it, as well as the online community where you can chat with other knitters about the process and figure out any changes they may have made. But without further ado, let me go on and actually introduce you to the patterns. The first one is the accessory pattern that came with it, and it's called Hort mitts. Now there's two sets of mitts. There is the full flip top mitts, which it's got this medallion moss seed cable running up on the outside edge of each of them. You can see matches on each side. It's got a full thumb, and the back of it flips, so it's particularly handy if you need to access your hands for perhaps turning on a phone or doing something a little bit more dexterous, and then you can close it back up again to keep yourself cozy if you're in very cold climates. If you're somewhere that you don't need a full mitten, but you still would like a little bit of wrist and hand warmth, then the second version is the fingerless mitts. These ones here, where there's just a shorter thumb and it finishes along here, but you've got the same moss stitch and moss stitch medallion running along here. These are all done in marled yarns. So this one is the Leah ore, so it's a grey gold mix, which is two of the colours that were used already in the contrast colours. Each of the other club installments has got a marled colour, but they use two different marls, which were for two of the original yarns that went out in previous installments from the club. So that is the Hort mitts. And now the part that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you is the finished blanket. Through the process of knitting in this knit along, we had a whole series of swatches that were done. So each of these swatches matched up with the stitch pattern of the pattern that we were working on. So they were practice swatches where you could practice the stitch pattern and you can measure your gauge on it. And then instead of just having a big pile of swatches that you never used, they were all designed to fit together for this final blanket. So here we've got, these are the swatches that were for the Hort mitts. So you've got the middle of it here. This one is the swatch that came from the Tashka cowl. And this one down here is the swatch that was from the Durka hat. So you've got the blackberry stitches and faux cables and a ladder stitch here. And all the way around it, you've got garter stitch squares. So through the whole process, there was a couple of skeins that were added for making these garter stitch surround all in one more neutral color that would that you'd have all the way around those individual swatches. And the last installment had the last several ones for you. And this particular one also had the finishing instructions. And what I've done is I picked up stitches and did a 3-needle bind off, and I used a very, you can see the brighter kind of navy color to join all of the blanket swatches, because I just liked the really dramatic effect that had. You can also opt to pick one of the other colors from the blanket, perhaps the gray one or one of the more neutral colors if you want a little bit more subtle. Or I actually think that, you see the way there's vertical, horizontal stripes? You could totally have one color for vertical, another one for the horizontal, and you could even create a totally different effect. So with just the simple 3-needle bind off, you can create all sorts of different blankets and really make it your own. Now, in case you think that's all that's in there, there's still one more surprise, and this is the Shasker pillow. And this came about because when I was starting off, some of my garter swatches were a little bit larger, and I didn't want to leave them to waste. So it starts off with that middle garter swatch, and then I picked up stitches around and did it on the front and the back, and did a 3-needle I-cord bind off all the way around to make a cushion cover that matches really nicely with the blanket. Now the club, it doesn't have enough yarn to do this, but if you actually decided I'm not going to use a blanket or I'm not going to finish it, this pillow is a very good option for using the yarn that you've already got. Or perhaps in a future order you might get a few extra skeins and you can add a cushion to go ahead to go with, to match up with your throw. So again, thank you very much if you partook in the club this year, and if you are not in the club, then you're very welcome to jump into the digital option. There's all of the yarn used in this is Blosta yarn. Some of the colors are in my shop in stock, other ones were exclusive to the club, but will come into stock with some kits in September. But you can go ahead and just order Blosta by itself for making any of the patterns as well. So if you've missed out, then just come along and find the digital option and come join us.